Do you believe in heaven? What about hell? What are they? Or do they even exist? Pew Research finds that of those that claim Christianity, 92% believe in heaven, while only 79% believe in hell. Curiously, 26% of agnostics believe in heaven, with 14% of them also believing in hell. We have to ask, how could people believe in heaven and then reject the existence of hell? Well, Pew breaks its findings down a little more. When we look at age groups, we find that the 18 to 29-year-old crowd has a 63% believability of heaven, with only 55% believing in hell. And then the 30 to 49 age group has a 69-59 split. Of the 50 to 64 age group, 81% believe in heaven, with 70% believing in hell. Then in the 65 and older group, it's a 79-62 split. In the age group breakdown, we can see that the greatest number of believers of heaven and hell are the 50 to 64-year-old bunch. Also, the youngest age grouping believes the least. Let's put hell aside for a moment and just focus on heaven. We ask, have any scriptures been identified that back up the claims of heaven? When we read heaven in the scriptures, it's important to remember that in ancient Hebrew, they used the same word for three different places. We have our sky or atmosphere. Also, there's outer space for the stars. And then there's the throne room of God. The word shamayim is used for each of these, and to determine which the writer was speaking of, the context of the entire passage needs to be taken into account. While we should all agree that there is an atmosphere of the earth and outer space with planets and stars in it, it's the throne room of God that draws all the skepticism. While there are many references to the throne room, let's look at a couple. In the Old Testament, we find Isaiah reciting a vision. He said, "In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple." Also, in the New Testament, John portrays a vision revealed to him by Jesus. He said, "At once I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne stood in heaven with one seated on the throne." Now, this last passage, when read in context, clearly describes God the Father seated on the throne. On a final note, when we discuss heaven and the scripture that's provided for us, Jesus himself makes a reference to paradise, or in Greek it's paradiso, which is the word they use for heaven. But what of hell? Today we simply say hell when describing the place of torment. However, we must also look at some other words. We have Sheol, Hades, and of course hell, the lake of fire, and Abraham's bosom or side. Now, while these words tend to be used interchangeably, they're actually quite unique. In Hebrew, Sheol is place of the dead, but they also used it for place of the unrighteous dead. Now, this isn't confusion or contradiction. Instead, Sheol is describing two unique places. It is a place for both the righteous and the unrighteous. In Luke, we find, "The poor man died and was carried by the angels to Abraham's side. The rich man also died and was buried in Hades. Being in torment, he lifted up his eyes and saw Abraham far off and Lazarus at his side. Here we find in the New Testament Hades. It is the Greek translation to describe Sheol. On a side note, it wasn't until the translation into English for the King James Version that the word hell was used and adopted for use in place of Hades. Now, back to our last scripture. I know you're wondering why Lazarus is a righteous man and the rich man is an unrighteous man could both go to the same place. In a word, they didn't. Let's read on. The rich man was in agony, and he was calling out to Abraham for relief when Abraham answered, Son, remember that in your lifetime you received your good things, while Lazarus received bad things. But now he is comforted here, and you are in agony. And besides all this, between us and you is a great chasm that has been set in place, so that those who want to go from here to you cannot, nor can anyone cross over from there to us. The place known as Sheol has two places within it, one for the relief of those who have pleased God, the saints of the Old Testament, and those who have chosen a life without God. Now, we'll discuss this to greater depth in part 2 of the series, but for now, let's move on to the lake of fire. Then death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire. This is the second death, the lake of fire. The lake of fire will serve as the eternal home for Satan, his demonic followers, and the unrighteous of mankind. In the Bible, there have been identified over 2,500 prophecies, and we can historically look at these and identify 2,000 prophecies that have already been fulfilled, with the remaining prophecies still set to our future. The Bible is historically authentic and accurate, and refers to both heaven and hell as real places with real purpose. Join me in part 2 of this series on heaven and hell, and we'll explore why someone would go to one place or to the other.